Learn to master your emotions. Reaction. Here's your trigger to remember this. I have never made a good decision when I was pissed off, when I was excited, or when I was emotionally upset. Never, not once. I have made good decisions when I've thought about that, when I've taken time to sleep and rest on it. Imagine how pathetic somebody's life is that the only thing they have time to do is sit around and pull other people down.
Yep.
And at that point, to deal with hate online, that's the only quote I've ever needed to get that out of my head. Never believe you've actually made it, and don't be afraid to start over.
I'm about to blow. I'm Tupac with the nouns and Biggie with the flow. Big boy with the style and Andre with the fro.
Flint, brother, welcome to the show. For those who are unfamiliar with you, give us a quick rundown of who you are, what you do, and why you started Old Man Energy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. Well, as you guys know, my name is Flint Anderson. I'm the host of the Old Man Energy podcast. And Old Man Energy is really a realization of several of my projects, but started about 3 or 4 years ago when coming to terms with my family aging out, having been an entrepreneur for a long time. I was back in the gym, just coming shortly off 75 hard, and got to thinking one day, and I was just feeling strong, lifting. I think I was doing deadlifts at the gym, and I was like, man, I wonder if somebody else's grandpa can do this. And got to thinking about how your dad was always seemed to be stronger, always seemed to have the right answer, always just he was there when we needed him. And I was like, yeah, that's I got that old man energy finally, and realized that nobody was using it. And I was like, oh man, this is good. I hashtagged it and kind of took off from there.
Love
Since
it.
then, we've got the podcast from it, Old Man Energy. I speak on different topics: entrepreneurship, manhood, fatherhood. Adoption is also a big one. 4 of my children are adopted. So that's where Old Man Energy came from. It's just my legacy, the compilation of what I've learned over this crazy life that I've lived for the last 25 years. I don't count the first 25 because I think we're all kind of idiots until we turn 25.
I'd even say some people don't come around until 30.
I agree. I've been old since I was a kid, though. So it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure to have you here. You've built a strong presence around personal integrity, discipline, and resilience. Can you kind of share where those came from? Like who was your mentor, and really kind of ingrain these in you?
I'd be happy to, and that's a huge question. So, there's I grew up very poor. We didn't have a lot. My dad was not in the picture until later in life, so I had a really good picture of what I did not want. Coming getting older, I knew there had to be a better way, and just couldn't quite figure out how to do it. So early on, I was seeking mentors. Now we all find mentors hopefully in grandparents or uncles, or usually we start with our family looking for mentors there, which I found some. But I knew early on, graduating high school, coming out of college, that I wanted more. I wanted to be a business owner. And the logic that struck me was the guy's name that appeared at the bottom of the check had more money than the person that the check was written out to. So it was always my goal to be that person. Um, Learned along the way that there's certain traits that everybody that I had mentor me had, and emboldened or embodied, not emboldened, but their personal integrity was always one of them, and discipline was another. And I'll start with integrity, because there's a lot of people out there that put one face up, and this is rampant in the influencer community and in the coaching community too.
Yep.
They'll put one face up. They'll show one side of their life online or to you when you first meet them. And then later, as you get to know them, or as you get to see behind the scenes, so to speak, it's not congruent with what they're showing to everybody else. They don't hold themselves to a level of integrity that is out there. And that's one thing I've really tried to impart as I've built this brand and built this business is you can see my content. It's consistent going back as far back as you want to go. But it also is not all sunshine and roses. I talk about when I'm struggling. I talk about failures just as much as I talk about winning. Talk about struggle. Talk about sometimes the grind, even when you are winning, is boring. And I believe that integrity is integral if you're going to have people following you and if you're going to be a natural born leader. The other thing that really got me was when I would talk to my mentors, especially the really successful ones, because you can get people to give you advice that aren't really doing much better than you, but that advice is worth whatever they're able to give for it. But the ones that were really successful, and this continues to this day through my mentors and the folks that I've started to surround myself with, is discipline has always been integrated into that because they don't live it's difficult to describe. They don't live in a state of reality. They constantly live in what they're creating, in putting deals together, in where they're going and where their dreams and goals are. And I didn't understand that for a long time. Was I kept telling them, I'm like, yeah, I get it. You got to have dreams. You got to have goals. Give me the good stuff. I need to know what to do. I want the good stuff. I don't want the dreams and goals. So come to find out, in order to achieve your in order to achieve your dreams, you have to turn them into goals. But in order to achieve your goals, you have to have discipline to do it. And discipline is a learned skill. My quote on that is: a discipline is applied force of will over time.
Love that.
Nobody wakes up tomorrow disciplined. You can have discipline tomorrow if you choose to, but then you got to pick to do it again another day, and another day, and all of a sudden it becomes a habit.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I like that you said that whoever's name is at the bottom of the check, because that actually reminds me, I was 16 years old. I lived in Minnesota. We were having floods because all the snow was melting and the rivers started just rapidly just getting higher and higher. And my uncle owned a construction company and then a building movers company. So they started donating a bunch of sandbags, and I'm 16 years old doing these sandbags. My fingers start bleeding, and I did it for like 10 hours that day, and I hated life. And I went to go grab the money from him, and he said, look, there's two places you can be. You can be on the side you're on right now, getting handed the money, or you can be on my side and you can be the one writing the check. And that was just, at the time, I didn't know how profound that would be for my future or anything like that, but it was huge, man. And it like feels like something, like it just resonates with what you just said, because it's so true. Like, you really do have two choices. You can either be the person writing the checks or you can be the person getting them handed to you. And yeah, I love that you brought that up.
It was, I don't know. You get called crazy when you think like that, or you're out of your mind, or get your head out of the clouds. And we've all, as entrepreneurs, heard these terms. I mean, and a lot of times we hear it from people closest to us or families. And if we have spouses and they're not on board, sometimes we'll hear it from them too, which is hard
Yep.
because you're literally building something out of nothing when you make this choice. You're saying, you know what, I know better than you, and I don't believe that I have to live this lie that I've been told my entire life, where I get to ask permission to have a vacation every a couple of weeks out of the course of a year. And you're going to just pay me X number for 40 years. And then maybe if I make good choices, I get to enjoy my life for 10 or 11 years before I pass away. Just seemed
Yep.
like a crap deal to me long term. But the other
100%.
alternative was to believe in something that didn't actually exist and that only a few people I knew had ever created. As a
Yep.
result, I've been a full-time entrepreneur for over 20 years now, and have the privilege of talking and teaching other people how to do it and how to live a life of abundance and just joy. But a lot of people are not willing to put in the work.
Yep. No, I look at it as a lot of people are more like order takers. Even a lot of people in sales recently, they just want inbound leads and they don't want to go out there and kind of source their own leads or fill their own pipeline and stuff like that. And I feel like it holds a lot of people back from creating the success that they could be creating, because instead of being an asset for the company, you're just running through running the drive through at McDonald's, just hoping that an order comes through and you can be the one to close it.
And I mean, let's be honest, as a sales rep, those are great when you can be an order taker because it's extra money. But if you can create and generate your own leads and nurture them, and you know how to do that long term,
Yep.
you'll never go hungry. And
Oh,
especially in today's environment, you get a young person out there that knows how to do that and is halfway ambitious, nothing is going to stop them. They're going to be so wealthy that they won't even understand how powerful what they're holding on to right now is.
for sure. For sure. So within your like 20 years of being an entrepreneur, what's the number one mistake that guys make when trying to really just take control of their own path?
Get your ego out of the way.
Ego.
Get your ego out of the way. Just convinced that you don't need any help, that you know the right answer to everything, and that when somebody in a position who is either financially or emotionally involved in the outcome tries to tell you something and you don't listen to them, that's all ego. And every single one of those will hold you back. And the only way I learned those was by repeatedly engaging in activity like that over and over and over again. I was the guy that would find literally every wrong way to do something just because I wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
And this, guys, or I say guys, I'm meaning everybody, but listen to your spouses too, because they're your number one advocate. They may come across as negative. Oh my God, here we go again. Especially if you've been an entrepreneur for a while, you've been trying to be, you're going to hear that over and over again. It's not
Yep.
because they want to see you fail. It's because they believe in you and they can't stand. And I'm sorry, it's not because they don't want to see you succeed. It's because they believe in you and they don't want to see you fail again, or they don't want to see you quit again. So listen to people, get your own ego out of the way, become a student, and grow. That's the number one mistake I made, was not listening soon enough because I thought I knew it all.
Yep. I think all of us fall into that at least one time. Me many times. So I completely understand that. And that's one thing that has helped everything that I'm creating, is just being able to remove the ego, ask for help when I need it, and actually listen when somebody's giving me advice, instead of just, I see so many people out there, they ask for help, but then they do the complete opposite of what somebody's telling them to do. And they wonder why their business is still not where they want it to be.
Well, there's another corollary to that they don't even know about, is that it's obvious when you think about it, but you ask somebody for advice and then immediately don't listen, they don't give you advice anymore,
Yep.
because that's not only disrespectful, it's a waste of their time. If you listen and choose not to implement it, you'll normally tell them, say, I appreciate that, but I think this is the right answer. People will respect that, especially people in a mentor position, because the people that I'm mentoring, I don't want them to listen to everything that I say, like they're a robot. I want
Yep.
them to learn. I want them to learn how I arrived at the decision. You know what? They may choose to not take my advice. I'm okay with that. Doesn't mean I stop giving it to them. But if
Yep.
I give them advice that they asked for and they just don't listen at all, you no longer have the privilege of my time. And that's something that goes away and you don't even realize it's gone sometimes. That just evaporates and you don't realize what you've lost.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that we can do as men is just teaching other men how to think. And if that's giving advice and then being able to think critically through it and be like, this isn't how I want to operate. I don't think that this is the direction I'm going to go with it. I do appreciate the device or the advice, but I'm going to go this direction, because they actually thought through all of it, and they were able to take that step back, remove their ego, and be able to see the full picture.
I agree. There's a lot of men out there that want to be good husbands. They want to be good men. They want to be good fathers and they want to be good leaders. And they have no idea how. They're raised in a
Yep.
single mother household. And I am not disrespecting single mothers. Single mothers have one of the hardest jobs on the planet. But a man has to lead a man. Whether you
Yep.
like that statement or not, it doesn't matter. So if you are a single mother and you're raising boys, get a man of integrity in their life as soon as you can, because they will get something from that you can't give them.
Yep. 100%.
And what you just said is it's how to think, because you can tell me how to solve a problem, but when a similar problem arises and you're not around, what am I going to do? You can teach me how to think of the solution for that problem. It's the old parable about give a man a fish or teach him how to fish. It's the same exact thing. Teach a man to think as a man and to not be afraid of conflict and not be afraid to piss people off from time to time. Because if you're doing your job as a dad or a husband, that's going to happen.
Yep. Even as a business owner,
Yeah.
especially coaches, like if you're doing coaching and like you're going to piss some people off because you're going to need to tell them stuff that they need to hear but don't want to hear in that moment. And if you're too big of a pussy to actually say the things that you need to say, like you're just going to continue to hold people back.
And I agree. I agree. And remember, guys, whenever you're out there, we're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. It's going to happen from time to time, but setting out to intentionally hurt somebody's feeling, that's not okay.
Yeah.
But but the truth is what it is. And if I'm going to irritate you or make you mad at me, I want you irritated or mad at me for the truth, not because I obfuscated something or left something out until it got to be worse. And then it looks like I lied to you or I operated without integrity.
Yep.
And
So
when
you talk.
inevitable,
Oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, you talk a lot about the difference between reacting and responding.
Yes.
Why do so many men struggle with this? And like, what's the first step to mastering that control?
Learn to master your emotions. Reaction. Here's your trigger to remember this. I have never made a good decision when I was pissed off, when I was excited, or when I was emotionally upset. Never, not once. I have made good decisions when I've thought about that, when I've taken time to sleep and rest on it. So when we react to something, that means that we're not in control. That means that our adrenaline, our norepinephrine, our what does Huberman call it? He calls it our lizard brain or our monkey brain is taken over, and it's just trying to fix the problem that's in front of us. That's a reaction.
Yeah.
Normally, if you react to a situation that you're in, it's not a great situation, or it's a really good situation to where you're not thinking clearly and your brain doesn't know the difference. It's kind of the same heightened emotional state. But if you take a minute, even a few minutes, to take a deep breath and step back, breathe, and think about what's going on. And this is insanely hard to do when you're heightened emotionally. Give yourself a minute to truly craft a response to whatever the situation is. You'll find that your initial reaction is almost always wrong, but your response will be calculated and will come out the best for everyone. And honestly, think back to some of the times that you've had this heightened emotional and you've been forced to not be able to respond right then and given it some time overnight, a few hours or what have you. A lot of times the urgency of the situation, once is dissolved, the situation really resolves itself. Or the answer is very, very apparent to all parties.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And then you're really big on like raising standards and refusing to settle. What do you see as the biggest factor keeping men stuck in mediocrity?
They don't dream big enough. They don't believe they can do it. So if they do dream big enough, they don't believe they can do it because
Yeah.
they're scared.
Yep.
It's okay to be scared. It's not okay not to take action. And I'm as guilty of this as everybody else. Every time I think I've set my goals big enough and dream big enough, I want to say I get knocked down, but I don't get knocked down. I just get the realization dawns when I hit it. I get there, I'm like, man, I set this goal for this year and I just hit it in 90 days. Wait, apparently it wasn't big enough. Let's try this again. And so we reset it again. But fear keeps us locked in. And unless you have standards every day of activities that you're going to perform, then that fear will keep you small
Yep.
as long as you let it. The thing is it's all in your head. That 90% of what we fear is not real, and the other 10% is always overcomable. Danger
Yep.
is real, fear is not.
Yeah, and I mean, like you've said before, like when you step up, you're gonna get shot at. Whether that's trolls online or people in your life, there's always resistance when you try to level up. And being able to prepare for that resistance and to be able to just kind of like barrel through it is what's going to set you apart from everybody else in the market, whether you're a business owner, you're just a husband with a career. It doesn't really matter because anytime you try to just level up your life, there's going to be those haters there that try to knock you down. How do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, we're talking about the crabs in a bucket theory. If you haven't heard that, don't go look it up. But basically, if you put one crab in a bucket, it's going to climb out and it will get out. You got to put a lid on the bucket. And I've never gone crabbing. I've just heard this story 1,000 times. But you put 2 or more in there, you don't have to do it anymore, because as soon as one tries to get out, the others reach up and grab him and pull him back down. Humans are a lot like that. They don't mind if you get ahead, as long as you don't get ahead of them.
Yep.
So are you going to get shot at? Yes. Will it be uncomfortable? Yes. Should you turn cynical and into a jerk for that? No. But you do have to be aggressive. You do have to be prepared for that. And you got to be willing to look some of these people, and sometimes it's people you have deep respect for, at them and say, I appreciate you, but you don't get to tell me how I'm going to live my life anymore. And you might have to actually physically say that to some people. But more than that, it's mental. It's we wait for permission from the people that are important to us, or some nebulous entity out there that says, okay, now it's time for you to win. And that never comes. Nobody's ever going to do that. I know I struggled and still continue to struggle with needing to have a purpose behind every interaction, especially the ones that are uncomfortable for me. Now, everything you do should have some sort of purpose to it, but just because it upsets you or just because it's your goal, that's enough of a purpose to do something, to move forward. It's not our job to change everybody in the world. It is our job to change ourselves, to be the best person that we can be. And as a result, we will impact the world around us.
Yep.
Hopefully that was a good answer to your question. I think I kind of wandered and started getting a little preachy there, but
No,
this is
I love it,
close to
man.
my heart.
I love it. I've never heard the crab in the bucket theory.
Okay.
So that's super interesting, because I can see that everywhere. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at. It could be the gym. It could be your career, business, relationships. There's always going to be that one person that doesn't want to see you do better than them. So they'll try to do what they can to sabotage it. A lot of the times, running Facebook ads, the amount of hate that you get in the comment section on a lot of those is wild. And it's like, do these people not have time to do anything else besides just try to criticize someone else that's trying to like make something for themselves? It's wild, man.
Gary Vee addresses that, and it's hard to narrow down Gary Vee's content because there's so much of it. But he actually addresses that. I heard him say one time, he said, imagine how pathetic somebody's life is that the only thing they have time to do is sit around and pull other people down.
Yep.
And at that point, to deal with hate online, that's the only quote I've ever needed to get that out of my head.
Love it.
And when I first started the Old Man Energy podcast, we got a lot of hate because there's men's issues are becoming more forefront now, but a couple years ago, even they were taboo. You didn't talk about them, and that's what I led with on the podcast. So initially, we got a lot of hate and a lot of comments. And my wife Des, bless her heart, she had our producer hide those comments from me, and because I took everything personal. And initially, I was struggling enough with the podcast and getting out there, because even as recently as 4 years ago in 2019, maybe that's 6 years ago. But anyway, when I first started posting online, I was scared to death to put things out there. And you can go back and look at this on my Instagram and see the evolution of this. So I was dealing with putting myself out there, with sharing this vision and this message with the world, which I knew was important. And something so small, if you let it, can destroy you.
Yep.
And these people don't give a rip about you. They don't care. They won't ever meet you in person. And if they did ever meet you in person, they wouldn't say the nasty stuff they're saying. So when you have those trolls and that hate coming in online, take it for what it is. And if you can't deal with it, have somebody else clear your messages for you.
Yep.
That way you don't know it exists, so that you can focus on your goal and your mission.
100%. Like, my wife, she does relationship coaching and stuff like that. And she's been having a lot of her posts go semi-viral, like 400,000 views and stuff like that. And the amount of hate she started getting in the comments is just wild. And she's like, I had to just stop looking.
You can't. You pull out of there the people, because the people that really get your message and need your message, they're going to find a way to communicate with you.
Yep.
I mean, you and I connected completely randomly through mutual friends just on Facebook, and found that our messages were in alignment with each other.
Yep.
So they will trickle to the top. Will you eliminate some people because of the hate in there? Unfortunately, it may happen, but somebody that really is reaching out to you, you'll be able to tell.
Yep.
The trolls can't control everything.
No, 100%. I told her, just don't worry about it. Just keep doing you. Keep focusing on your message, because those right people are going to come through, and you're going to impact a lot of lives if you just keep going.
And one thing too, and Des came up with this in her research, as far as, because there's some of the hate speech that we get back in on the trolls side, especially on the advertising or on the posts that go semi-viral. It's odd what they post. It doesn't make quite sense with the message. And come to find out, she found that there's companies out there that are paid to go and create
Yep.
that negative aura and that negative vibe. But because people tend to be more reactive to a negative, like we talked about earlier, we react to negative situations, so that drives their engagement even further on those platforms, and then they can take those and use them other places. So remember, even some of your hate that's out there, that's all generated just for clicks. It's not even people that really dislike you. They're just doing it to get engagement.
Yeah, I seen a video. It was about a month or two ago, and it was about these Chinese phone farms, and they'll have like 1,000 phones connected to one computer. Each phone is logged into its own like Facebook or TikTok
Hmm.
account, and essentially its main goal is just to go out there and make those types of comments, and just spam everybody, whether that's trying to get people into like those crypto scams or whatever it is. But yeah, it's wild how far people are going to just spread this hate all around online.
You can actually order a phone farm. Did you know that? I looked it up.
No.
You can order like a 10 or 12 bank phone farm. They send it to you with a chip and everything. Just plug it in your computer. You can use it.
Oh
It's not
wow.
ethical, but you can. I
Uh,
was wondering when I was learning about phone farms. That's what
yeah.
started showing up. I was like, okay, you can order one, increase your clicks, or stream YouTube videos to increase the clicks and to increase the plays. It's wild. If they put that much effort into actually creating valuable content instead of trying to scam the system, they'd make way more money.
Oh, 100%. And like I would never want to plug that into my computer. I feel like once you do, it's just compromise.
Oh, you're just done at that point.
Yep.
I'm to the point. I have a good friend that owns an IT company. He won't even scan a QR code. I mean, he's like, "No, we're not doing that. I don't know what that's going to put on there."
Yep.
I'm at this point. I'm convinced that Adobe is a virus.
Yeah.
Not really. I use it for everything, but I have one computer dedicated to Adobe because it just ends up everywhere on the computer.
Yeah, I've been trying to delete it for months from my MacBook,
Oh, do a
and
factory
it
reset.
just it won't delete. Yeah.
That's why I have one specific computer. It has Premiere, it has Photoshop. All the Adobe programs are on one computer. That way I don't have to worry about it. When I'm done with it, I'll just reset it. Because I used to have one on one computer, one on another, and it's always running in the background. Not to gripe about Adobe. I like their products, and we agree to that whenever we install it. So when we know what
Yep.
we're getting into. But yeah, I wouldn't plug anything that was that level of sketchiness into the computer at all, ever, because it would. I mean, you don't even know who's compromising your account or what's going on at that point.
Yep.
And we've all put a lot of effort into our online presence. I mean, I didn't build what I've got overnight, and I'm not even that big, and it's taken me a couple of years.
Yep. So now you've mentioned a lot that men don't have real support systems. I fully believe in this as well. I feel like a lot of men are left alone with their own emotions, their own thoughts, and they don't have other brothers that they can go and actually have real conversations with. What do you think is like the biggest challenge like men face when it comes to brotherhood and meaningful connections?
Man, that's a great question. That's a very emotional question for me. Um, we don't have any way to, through ritual or whatever, establish that connection as adults, especially in America.
Yep.
We don't have any type, except for the military, we don't have any type of rite of passage to go from manhood into adulthood. And as we get older, it gets more and more difficult for men to connect and make true bonding friendships. Now, through nobody's fault of anything. We get older, we have our families, we have our work, and a lot of times men typically work more as we get older, especially in our late 20s, 30s. So we don't have a lot of extra time. And the extra time that we do have, we're either exhausted or we're putting it into our family, we're putting it into our children, and rightfully so. But what happens is that if we don't make those bonds early in life and continue them, then we end up very isolated and very alone as we get older. I know I struggled with this. It's one of the reasons I originally did 75 Hard back in 2019. It ended up finishing it for other reasons, but I was looking for a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
I'd been a father my entire adult life. I still am, and you never stop being a father. Please don't take that wrong. But out of 7 children, they were starting to age out of the house. So I had more time, and it sounds ridiculous, but when I only had 4 kids at home, I had a lot more time than when I had 7. It was weird because most people couldn't handle 4 kids at home.
Yeah.
But I started looking for a purpose, and there wasn't a lot of guys out there that I had connected with or that I bonded with. We moved a lot when I was younger, and my wife and I are best friends. We are as close as any couple I've ever seen, as any set of best friends as I've ever seen. But again, men need men. Iron sharpens iron. And she'll be the first one to tell you that men need men to be in their lives. So there's that isolation. The other thing is that we were taught, especially as Gen Xers, and I don't like to, unless it's in a humorous way, I don't like to use the generational stereotypes, but we were taught that you are seen and not heard, suck it up, be tough. So as a result, we now have a generation of men who don't express their emotions to each other.
Yep.
Um, if you, if you've listened to any of my content at all, I end with love you. I tell my children the last thing, guys and girls, I got 5 boys and 2 girls. The last thing they hear, anybody hears from me on the phone is I love you, because I don't want the last thing I said to them to be anything other than I love you. I make sure that my friends, my sons, all the men in my life that I know get a handshake. You may get a shoulder hug, you may get a big hug from me, but I made it a point to start expressing that level of camaraderie and comfort on purpose. And you would be amazed at the feedback. For a week, make it a point with every guy in your life that you know to shake his hand, lean over, give him a shoulder hug, give him a regular hug, and whenever you leave, say, "Hey, I love you, brother." And see what a difference that makes, not only in your relationships with them, but in your own mental state. Because your connections, by the very action of doing that, will start growing. It feels weird at first, don't get me wrong, but it's worth it. And what happens is you will start to realize that we are not as isolated as we are. All of us deal with the same problems. We just try and do it on our own. So yeah, make it the only way to fix this problem is to make it a point of being more open and more honest with the men in your life that are already there. And if you don't have any good men of integrity in your life, go find some.
Yep.
They're not that hard. They are out there. We just don't talk about it much because we get so blasted for it.
Where do you think like the best places to find some men in integrity are?
That's a good question. A lot of people are going to say church. There are men of integrity everywhere. I'm not going to tell you that every man in a church has a lot of integrity, because that's been not to be true. But the same thing as you could go to a biker gang, for that, a biker club, not gang, forgive me, and you're going to find men of integrity in there, and you're going to find men of integrity not in there. So I find men of integrity to be friends with where you are. That's the best place to start looking. If you're a religious person, you go to church, identify the men of integrity there,
Yeah.
make friends with them, cultivate those friendships. And I'm not talking about, hey, you want to go have a coffee with me? Because that'd be fun. No, just make friends with them. Maybe you like doing stuff. Maybe you talk. But it is okay to also walk up to a guy and say, hey, I think you'd be really cool to be friends with, and see where the conversation goes. What a compliment. Somebody walked up to me and said, hey, I think you'd be a cool guy to be friends with. You're going to get some of my time. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes. So find men of integrity where you are. Start looking for, if you have to look for organizations to find them in, start looking for organizations that foster levels of integrity.
Yep. No,
And
I
there's a
agree.
lot of them out there.
Yeah, I just went to the church that I started going to when I moved. They had a thing called Fight Night, and it was
Mhm.
just a men's night where they had a bunch of different things that you could do. Where it was like axe throwing, indoor simulation of hitting a golf ball, doing a sledgehammer on a car, and like all of these things. But they got, I think there was like 400 men, all came up to the church, and it was a really good time, and there was a lot of really good men there. So I agree with the church thing. I also agree that there are a lot of people that aren't in integrity that do go to church, and they go because they want to try to move the needle to integrity, but they're still out of integrity. So they think that if they go to church, it's just going to kind of fix whatever they're kind of screwing up in their other life.
Yes.
Um, but when you became a father, like how did that shift your perspective on business, leadership, and life in general?
That's a good question. My journey to fatherhood is a little unique. I met my wife when we were in our mid 20s. Well, she was in her late 20s. I was in my mid 20s, and she had 3 children. Um, so when we got together, that was actually a sticking point early in our relationship. Is she could not have any more children, and I have no biological children. We talked about it, went from there, and understand I'd always wanted to be a dad, and I at first it was I wanted to be a dad because mine wasn't around. And my dad and I have since made peace, but there was a lot of strife associated with my father when I was younger. So I knew a lot of what not to do.
Yep.
And I wanted to reverse that. Um, After a while and very quickly, I realized how much I enjoyed being a dad. And I hadn't thought about that until I started talking about it and was like, man, okay, well, now I'm just a dad. That was a very natural role for me to step into. We didn't force it on her children, but 2 of the 3 call me dad and identify that they don't identify anybody else as their dad. So how did it alter things? It didn't. It made me feel more responsible because obviously I am more responsible. But I was determined not to give up on my dreams and my goals. I knew I wanted freedom. I knew I wanted freedom for my family. And Des and I were very much in alignment on that, that we didn't want to give the best years of our life and the best years of our family's life to somebody else and just have to settle for a couple hours in the evening and the weekends.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? That may sometimes those kind of choices and those kind of dreams make things look very weird and just the exact opposite on the front side. So while we were both working corporate jobs, and this I'm talking early 2000s, guys, so this is like 25, 30 years ago. We were both working corporate jobs. We were building a business at night. We hired a nanny and we saw our kids for dinner and got them ready for school. And sometimes I didn't even get to get them ready for school. Sometimes that was just her. And this went on for almost 2 years. So that's really the opposite of when you hear me talk about freedom and want to spend time with the family and raise the kids and be there for them. That's the exact opposite. But after 18 months, Des came home and hasn't worked since. There was a
Oh,
brief time when I was sick, but that's a different story. But and after another year, after that 18 months, I came home. And our youngest children never knew me to have a traditional job. And that's awesome. Or they never wanted for anything. They never understood having to wait until summertime for vacation. We went places in the middle of the week. We went places on the weekends. We were able to spend time and do things with them. And as a result, it gave them a very structured, not structured, it gave them a very unique childhood as opposed to what their friends understood as a norm for reality. But our older children remember the nanny. They remember us not being there. They remember us working all the time. They remember us being exhausted all the time. So don't be afraid to let your kids see you struggle as long as they know why. Share your dream with them and then make it happen. Because when you do share your dream with your family, you better be doing everything you can to make it happen. Because if not, then you just made them a bunch of false promises.
yeah.
So there's
No, I
my
love that.
that all of that relates to being a father, and I feel very deeply about all of that.
No, I love that perspective because I know, like when we had our first child, December of 2021. She's just turned 2. So that might be 2022. And the years, man, have been just going by.
They go faster as she gets older, by the way.
Yeah, no, I can't even imagine it going faster because I feel like I just blink and another year's already by. Today, her favorite word was shit, and
I think I saw you post that earlier.
yeah, it's so funny because my wife's like, "Oh no," and my daughter goes, "No, oh shit," and I can't get mad because she uses it in the right context. So, like, at least that's happening.
Well, and also if she gets a rise out of you, then she's going to do it more because it's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
um, but yeah, like last year and even the first year, I was working 60 hours a week. And this year I made it a commitment, almost like the 18 months that you had. It was like 2 years for us. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be done at 5 p.m. every night. I'm gonna use that time to spend with her and really just be there for her as she grows up and be there for my wife. My wife doesn't have to work if she doesn't want to. She's got her own little business that she's been growing. And that's the complete opposite of what I had growing up. I'm sure you kind of might have had the same, where I wasn't a single mom, but my mom was with a very abusive guy. He would like abuse her in front of my brother and I, and he would end up hitting my brother and I, and like stuff like that. And I learned, like you said, a lot of the stuff not to do when raising a kid, and just my mom working 3 jobs growing up, never really around, but still there when we needed her. But yeah, I always told myself that I'll never let my children grow up being raised by someone else, because I think that's where a lot of children kind of grow up in, just I wouldn't say a dark way or just a bad way, but they don't have that bond with their own parents. They have it with the nanny or the babysitter, whatever you want to call that person. Um, what do you believe is like the number one thing a father can do to set his kids up for success, but not just financially, but as like men and women who are ready to take on the world?
Several things. Tell them the truth and show them how to do it. Children may be ignorant, but ignorant is lack of knowledge. It's not the ability not to learn. And if we continue to treat children like automatons and not teach them what everything that's going on, and I make it age appropriate, but explain to your children what you're doing. Explain to them why it's important. You want them to learn about money, teach them about quarters, making dollars. I mean, start when they're little.
Yep.
Teach them about money. If you don't know money yourself, then you need to go learn it. If you want them to know how to show affection, then show them, love them, hug them, even if that's not. And I, I don't like that everything's put into categories these days. Well, this is my love language. Well, I'm a Gen Xer, this and that. But even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, show them that it's okay to care about somebody, but that you can still have boundaries. Teach them how to do this.
Yep.
Read to them. Give them the ability to learn things that they need to know. You want a child to love to read? Read to your child.
Yep.
They'll they'll sit and listen. They'll look forward to it, and also do things that are important to your children with them. Because there's only so many memories that we get to make with our children, and we don't get to pick when those memories are. But those memories are what shape our children as they move into the future. So the more opportunities that you make with your children to have memories, the more of those memories will be through your guidance and your lessons.
Yeah, and especially like, what is it, year 2 to 6, where they're just like sponges and they're examining everything that's going on, trying to figure out why it's going on, and that's where they create their entire worldview. Essentially, is between 2 and 6. So being able to be there and give them that guidance and that education, the knowledge, the safety of being able to feel their emotions and speak their mind and stuff like that, I think that's huge, uh, especially between those years. Of course, it's still important throughout their entire life, but I think those years are the most important. And unfortunately, that's where those are the years that a lot of parents do hand them off to babysitters and stuff like that.
Well, and life gets in the way, but and I think that really goes back to because I really don't believe that any parent intentionally does what we're talking about, but almost all parents do it.
Yep.
They just don't realize it. But it goes back to living life with intention and with specific purpose, or just going through the motions and doing what you're told. I'm just
Yep.
trying to get to the next paycheck. I'm just trying to get to the next day. Instead of, you know what? Come hell or high water, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to spend time with my children. And folks, I got some bad news for you if you're selfish and you have children. It ain't about you anymore.
No.
It's about, yeah, I don't care whether you want it to be or not. It's about the children. It's about that small being that is completely dependent on you for every piece of their existence. They are now the most important thing in your life, no matter what you think or believe. And if you don't act accordingly and you don't care for that child, you don't love that child, and you continue to operate in a selfish manner, uh, God help you when that kid reaches to be a teenager.
Yeah, they're going to instill those same values and everything.
They're going to give it back to you in spades.
Yeah, what's the thing? Like your children are 2 times worse than you were when you were a kid or something like that.
Whew. Man, one of my sons about to get it. Oh, good Lord. That's
Oh,
your kids are reflections of us, but they're not little carbon copies of us. We look for the familiarity and the similarities, but they're really cool. There's a clip going around from Modern Family where I think it was one of the and I'm a pop culture junkie. I teach using pop culture, so and if you haven't picked up on that, that's where we're at. But he stands up and he talks and he says, first you have babies and they're just the cutest thing and they're awesome, and then one day they're replaced by this little human that runs around and asks the absolute most interesting questions in the world, and then that baby's replaced by, and he goes on through this speech as children growing up, and I'm telling you, for a sitcom, that speech brought tears to my eyes because I was like, man, I can remember that specifically feeling the way he's talking about. So I encourage everybody to go look that clip up.
love it. So now, like you're really open about a lot of the mistakes and everything that you make. What's one mistake that, looking back, was actually a blessing in disguise?
Oh man, I've never been asked that before. One mistake that was a blessing in disguise. I'm going to say when I went bankrupt the second time. First time was a learning lesson, but didn't really learn the lesson. The second time was more my fault than anything, but it completely changed the way I went about building the business. Always before, I'd built the business with me as the crux, and then everybody else orbited around me. But I took myself out of it, and everything falls apart. And I know that sounds familiar to a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like you've really just built yourself a harsh, stressful job, because as
Yeah.
soon as you stop doing anything, it doesn't stop work. It stops working. So when I did that the second time, the way I built the business after that changed because I rebuilt the business myself, different industry, but built it in such a way that once it reached a certain point, I could walk away from it and it would still run itself. And I'm still doing that to this point. So looking back, that was a blessing in disguise. And we call really harsh lessons blessing in disguise, because that was a hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about it. I wouldn't encourage anybody to learn things the way I've learned, because it cost me a lot of money, a lot of stress, and a lot of pain over the years.
Oh, I bet, man. I couldn't imagine having to go through that twice.
Uh,
I know my mom went through it, but yeah, it's got to be a real hit to the ego, like when you're in the midst of it. But when you actually get a year or two down the road, you could probably look back on it and be like, like, this is where I really messed up, and this is how I make sure I don't do it again.
well, I'll share a more recent experience, because it hasn't been just twice. That was just the second time. One of my businesses up and since we started building it in 2014. Actually, one of the ones I built coming out of this situation I just referred to, built it in the way that I just described, in a way that I didn't think would have an issue. And the last quarter of last year, the bottom dropped out of the market that I was in
Oh
and
wow.
eliminated 3 of my 4 largest clients. And we're talking 7-figure clients. So I'd done everything right according to mentors, and everything else in the business fell apart anyway. So you want to talk about a blow to your ego. You can be doing everything right and it still doesn't work.
Yep.
That's painful. Now, was that a blessing in disguise? I don't know. I'm in the middle of rebuilding right now, but I'm rebuilding in a different way. It happened right after I decided that I wanted to speak and teach full time. So, okay, what do we do when we have a project that we want to do? We go out, we work, we take the time, and we start pouring into this. Well, I'm podcasting. Now I'm booking speaking gigs. Now I have coaching clients. I have teaching clients. I have corporate clients. And all of a sudden, I have to rebuild this whole infrastructure over here because this is the one that I'm living on while I'm building this other business. That level of ego, I don't even know what to describe it. I felt like a complete failure, and like I almost walked away from what the true dream was. And when I teach, I talk about your lighthouse, because your goals and your dreams are your lighthouse, and the lighthouse doesn't give a rip where the boats are, and it doesn't give a
Yep.
rip what kind of boat it's warning about the rocks. It just is. And it's there whether you can see it through the clouds or not, which is where Ed Milet talks about our standards. So you set your standards that you're going to do every day based on your dreams and your goals, which are your lighthouse. And when you can't see it, because whenever you're not sure how you're going to pay your mortgage or how you're going to keep the lights on, it's real hard to talk about your dreams and goals and where you're going 5 years from now. It messes with you.
Yep.
But if you've already set those standards ahead of time, then you just hold on to that, and daily you just do the things that you know you have to do to get there, and eventually those clouds part.
Love it.
And I'm very emotional about this because I'm in the middle. Oh, no, I'm not to say I'm on the back end of this at this point, but I'm I've had to do this within the last year, and a lot of people that have only ever known me having a large business and seeing the travel and all the different cool stuff that I got to do, they'd never seen that side of, okay, well, when it's time to work, you know what? It's 15, 16, 18 hours a day. I don't care. I'm going to do what I need to do to get back where I need to get.
Love it.
I think that level of example is important for our families, but it's also important for other men to see that, yeah, we're not the only ones out there fighting.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So, like, looking ahead, what's next for you? What's the big vision for Old Man Energy and like the work that you're doing?
2 things. The big vision for Old Man Energy is to make a positive impact on as many people's lives as I can. What does that mean specifically? That means that you're going to start seeing me on larger and larger stages, sharing the same exact message in different ways, in different crowds, and different attitudes. Now, some of those will be corporate stages where I'm talking about entrepreneurship, networking, sales, whatever I happen to be teaching. But some of those are going to be stages like this, where we get to talk about manhood, we get to talk about fatherhood, we get to talk about the engine that really drives that corporate train. Because let's
Yep.
face it, none of us would have a business. We're not doing it for the practice. We'd spend all day with our families if we could, just doing cool stuff.
Yep.
So our families and the men we're the ones that are driving this train. The train is just the fun part that we use to get there. So yeah, look for that. That's where we're growing, and that's what we're doing. I'm not stopping until that vision has become a reality.
Love it. For the guys listening and want to connect with you or be part of what you're building, what's the best place for them to find you?
If you're a podcast, you can find me on all the platforms, the Old Man Energy Podcast. I prefer YouTube because I video and audio every podcast, and I think you can tell how authentic somebody's being if you look them in the face, even if it's being recorded. You can tell if they're telling the truth or not. Otherwise, you can find me on all platforms. If you Google Old Man Energy or Flint Anderson, you'll find me. So,
Perfect. And then I always like to do some rapid fire questions.
mhm.
What's one book every man should read?
Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.
Hinder's Game? Never heard of that one.
It's a fiction book. It's one of the most powerful books you'll ever read.
Okay. Love it. Biggest lessons you learned in the last year?
Never believe you've actually made it, and don't be afraid to start over.
I think the both of those are extremely powerful. Especially like don't ever believe you've made it, because I don't know how many times where we'll have like a huge month and then I'm like, oh, I've made it, and then success starts at zero every single month, and you got to earn it every single day. And when you start thinking that you've made it, you take the foot off the gas a little bit. You don't continue to ride that momentum, and it really gets you. It really does.
One of my mentors, he was my boss at the time when I was selling copiers years ago. He had a good example for that. He said, when we're having a bad month and things are going wrong, I know which problems I need to fix. So I'm usually pretty relaxed. When we're having a great month and it doesn't look like anything's going wrong, that's when I get paranoid, because I just don't know what problems are coming, because something's
Yeah.
always out there.
If you could teach only one lesson for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Be true to yourself. I
Love
don't
it.
have anything to add to that. Be true to yourself. I would teach
Love
people
that.
how to do that.
And then fast forward to the end of your life. If you could leave one final message for the men who followed your journey, what would it be?
Do better than I did.
Love that. Love that. That's huge. I think a lot of, like, I mean, we talked about it a little bit ago, where a lot of people don't want you to do better than them. And being able to find a man that's integrity, that is out there coaching other men and actually wants them to do better than them, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So I love that, brother.
I want everybody that learns from me to go out there and do much more with it than I ever have.
Love it. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on here. Appreciate your time. I've definitely had a great conversation with you, and I look forward to continuing to connect with you.
Same. I thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story with your family.
Of course.